Hi guys. So I had a bit of extra time this afternoon since my kids have a play date with one of their friends, which actually gives me extra time to work or stream or clean up. And though cleaning is kind of overdue here in my studio, as you might notice from the noise in the background, like I said before, I actually do enjoy these live streams. For those of you who are joining me live, just chat about pigments. I just got a suggestion from Sergio, and I hope you are joining us live as well. Let's just make burnt sienna. So this is the pigment. This is the pigment that I use. I should have a bucket of it. Yeah, I have a liter version of this as well. But for my cupboard, I actually do like these small jars, which I can just refill if this is empty. So that's why you actually don't see me with the very large jars of pigment in my videos. And this is burnt sienna, how I sell it. So yes, product placement is on YouTube. This is my own brand, Dirty Blue. It's in the pan. It's PBr7. So let's make this into a beautiful watercolor paint. So just to kind of connect my live streams a bit, try to be as informative as I can get during the live streams, though it's also about, you know, connection to the community and, you know, my followers, just talking about pigment, talking about paint, you know, sharing the passion. And that's what it's all about for me, just sharing it, showing stuff, sharing my enthusiasm and excitement. So that's why I, you know, bring a lot of tools into my live streams, like the color hue circle, the pigment one from Bruce McAvoy from last stream. Hi Sergio, welcome. So PBr7 burnt sienna is right over there, and as you can see, it's just a desaturated orange, right? So brown is just a desaturated scarlet or orange. When it's over here, when we're looking at like the ochres or the umbers, those are desaturated browns or ochreish yellows, but this is in the same hue as my Indian yellow, which is a, or Indian, that's not exactly the same, but kind of near cadmium yellow deep or nickel dioxide yellow. Browns are desaturated oranges or yellows. If you desaturate a bright yellow, you get to a green. Just, you know, add black to any bright yellow and you get something greenish. Really interesting stuff. So yeah, mixing browns is not just like, you know, like people would add green and red. The curve kind of goes like this, if we're talking about which, depending on which reds and which greens, right? But if we talk about this part, you go through the browns, but you can also mix browns with any kind of saturated hue alongside this part of the circle and just add black to it, right? I know it's not a very popular thing to do with watercolors, but you know, just get the saturation down and you'll end up near the middle where we are right now. So this is the version that I like to use. It's a lovely orangey brown, quite warm. You can see it in the swatch here. I really like this version of it, since it's just the right thing between everything else that my mixing palette has. I have Indian red in there, I have raw umber in there, yellow ochre, but for this extra like orange earth color, the burnt sienna. This burnt sienna is a great option. I've tried. Yeah, I was about to do that. For when the chat isn't kind of live with the video for replay, I was just asked, do tell us about this version of burnt sienna that you prefer. I like the brightness of it. So this is obviously quite a bright chromatic pigment, and I like how it swatches like that as well. You can make like the mass tone is really like a very desaturated but clearly an orange hue, whereas some burnt siennas, PBr7, I have to add that, are more red or more like towards the Phoenician or Indian red hue. I also have this red ochre here standing next to me. This is a similar hue in pigment, but this is as a paint, it's way more red. So never trust, you know, what a pigment looks like. This isn't. Let me have a look if I have one. Yeah. So this is a Egyptian palette. I spilled a bit of the lapis lazuli here, but this is Egyptian palette in the making. So I still need to refill these. But this is the earth or the ochre that I just showed. So the pigments look quite alike, but as I paint, this is way more red, also on paper, than this is. Interestingly enough, there are some pigments that are exactly the same hue as this pigment is in its raw state, but they dry like a violet. So those are mostly made out of a synthetic iron oxide, PBr101. Burnt sienna versions of that. They're all called burnt sienna. I have to agree, yeah, orangier or oranger burnt siennas are the loveliest to work and mix with. I really have to agree with you on that. It's that's why I love this one. I have loads of PBr7s. Loads of them are burnt siennas, but it's just, you know, the pigment number doesn't say as much with when we're talking about PBr7, since the range of hues you get from that pigment number is incredible. All the umbers and siennas, raw and burned, are PBr7. You have red earths that are PBr7. So yeah, this is just burnt sienna, and we know what we're talking about. And this is a version of burnt sienna and a version of PBr7. In this case, it's my version of my burnt sienna. Yeah, that's why I kind of paused a bit. It is gritty. We're talking about an earth color. though it's a very fine earth color, it's a very fine version of this pigment, it will make quite a lot of noise. So my apologies in advance. Although this is not as bad as I would. It's not that bad. It's not as bad as if I would mull an azurite here or malachite, lapis lazuli, hematite, you name it. Those are coarser pigments to start with, and as I just go over the middle, you hear I'm actually not doing anything, right? So it's still quite coarse as a pigment. But if I do this, like some people mull their paint, this isn't actually doing a lot more than this it would do when you're just moving it with your palette knife, right? So this sound is where you're actually really dispersing, rubbing all the pigment particles into the binder, and that's why it's quite labor intensive as well. Lovely sound of a crazy cat scratching my window. I don't hope that happens too often with you, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah. The cat of our neighbours is one of those teases our cats that are inside. Going to use a little bit more surface area here. Yeah, I think that's an understatement. I think that's quite an understatement. So where do you live exactly? Sorry if you already told me that in a previous stream. I forgot. I don't have to know exactly, like I don't need the coordinates, but in which country? Ah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world at the moment. So I'm quite glad that I'm just here behind my plate with my muller and my pigments. My kids playing somewhere else also kind of helps the peace of mind a bit sometimes. And I have to say I really appreciate the live streams and the interaction with you guys. So as you can see, it's not quite a difficult pigment to get smooth. Question is it fine enough as it is right now? Is it dispersed well enough? Yeah, that's nice of you to say, but it's why I quit my job to actually do this as a living, for a living. can be a bit, let's mull it a bit more, let's add water to it. Need to clean this. So in the meantime, when since my blade is kind of clean enough for me for what I want to do, let's scrape together the paint to prevent it from drying out more. And let's have a look where the burnt sienna that I'm making, so my version of the burnt sienna, would be placed in that color wheel. So you might say to yourself right now, that would have been smarter to do before you started mulling, and you would be absolutely right. That would be so incredibly intelligent if I would have done that, but I didn't. I didn't even think about it. So let's have a look. Let's put this on here, and it's quite a it's not the best of my swatches. Let's see what this does. Yeah, so let's do it again. That doesn't change anything. So as you can see, it's quite a nice slope it has actually. It's not very saturated, especially here, but it reflects loads of red. So you can see this is a very warm burnt sienna. When I would compare that with any other brown, I have some browns here, although these are like the swatches, I need to kind of redo them. Okay, so let's compare that to a raw umber, for instance. Has lots of greens in there for a brown. That's almost completely diagonal line, that is. A green umber, that should be greener, right? It is. So a spike in the greens, and quite a well, a slight line up towards the reds. Let's have a look what Indian red does. That should be, yeah, that should have an enormous spike in the reds. And Azo russet, let's compare it. Blues are reflected by that as well. But like the burnt sienna that I'm making actually just has quite a beautiful, almost diagonal line here from the blue on, right? So a warm orange. That is a fun question. Do you own brand name watercolor paint? I actually do, yeah. Actually used to paint quite a lot, especially in as a base. I worked in mixed media. I don't like to say it like that. Kind of feels pretentious or something. But I use watercolor as a base for large drawings, which I added details in with watercolors and color pencils after that. But most of the effect and the texture of the skin of the creatures, I made creatures in drawings and sculptures and stuff like that. The base was watercolor paint, and I started with like the student quality paint when I was in, well actually when I was in high school, but when I was on the Arts Academy, so you know, affordable paint. Then I started to work in acrylics a bit more for work, you know, on the Arts Academy, acrylics, oils, stuff like that. I actually got to know some pigments by name and what they did in acrylics, and I later found out that watercolors even have more characteristics of those pigments showing. So that was kind of my introduction towards like, okay, a pigment it's just not a color, right? There's not a lot of people that teach you about pigments in paint. We even had to have a workshop of someone who explained us, you know, what's all the different symbols on the tube, what do they mean, what's light fastness, things like that, sort of really the basic stuff, right? Since we can be pretentious, that's something we all know here right now, but it's weird that no one told us about pigment. Right? What is a pigment? What does pigment do for us? Where does it come from? Understandable. As an artist, you don't need to know. You need to work with colors, but also I think pigments are quite important. Right? Obviously, right now they are way more important to me than the average person who works with colors. But I did get to collect quite a few of brand named watercolors. Yeah, I actually tried most brands until about 3 years ago. So when I started buying pigments, I stopped buying watercolors. Also from other makers. It's not that I don't want to support anyone, I want to support everyone as much as possible, but financially I just can't. With the paints that I sell, I can invest in stuff that I need for future products, future classes. Crema Pigment has been kind enough to sponsor me on some for some subjects. I had a great deal with my spectrometer as well. I had a crowdfunding project. I'm working on a database, but the people from NYX Sensors also were kind enough to give me a very, very generous discount for it, for what I do, since this spectrometer is actually used in professional, you know, lines, mostly decorative paintings like house painting and wall painting, things like that. So not the artistic side. So they were interested in how this would do with pure pigments. I 3D printed my own adapter for pure pigments as well, since theirs just wasn't accurate enough for me to get as close as possible. I need to say that right, to get as close as possible, because they had a great adapter with a plastic slide over it. It is way more functional and practical than the one I made, but the plastic slide, since it needs to be shipped, it needed to be quite sturdy. But you know, they were really understanding and really helpful. So yeah, all the money I make right now, it's more like a hobby than something that makes a living, since I try to invest everything I earn in either new pigments, like new exciting things that I can introduce to a wider range of people, or stuff that I can use for my classes, or my the sharing of, you know, information, things that I find out. Like I said a while back, I don't know if it was last week or the beginning of this week, during a live stream, there is actually a pigment, a lapis lazuli pigment, that I found out not to be fully genuine, and it was really hard for me to actually say this. Okay, I felt the pigment between my fingers, I smelled the pigment. Also, sometimes very important, don't do that with all pigments since some of them are highly toxic. But it's not like I stuck my nose in the jar of pigment, but from a distance I can smell the sulfur in the pigment. I did an acid test with the pigment, and really everything that the hunch that I had, like from opening the bottle to like looking into it, it was confirmed more and more. The more I looked into it, the more I knew for sure that it was a mixed thing. Like, it couldn't be fully natural. So let's take out some pans for PBr7. Oh, I need to have a look. Sorry, guys. Yes, watercolors are honest when it comes to pigments. That's why I like them this much. Right, it shows all the qualities of a pigment. Obviously, in oils and acrylics, you can work with transparency and layering and things like that. Maybe better than with watercolors, or in a different way. But when it comes to characteristics like granulation, flocculation, separation, hi Janina, welcome. Watercolors are amazing to work with. Oh, I don't want that in my pan. So burnt sienna is one of those paints that I pour in really thin layers. Since it's PBr7, it's a natural earth pigment, and they tend to crack and trap air bubbles a lot when you pour layers that are too thick. So that's already on the thick side. I might be able to show you on the live, I'm not sure if I can do it, what I was talking about with the lapis lazuli pigment. Not sure about it though, so. So natural earth pigments are quite thirsty as well. You notice that when mulling, they get sticky far more easily than a synthetic pigment would get. So sometimes people just add more kind of glycerin to prevent cracks or help it from cracking up in the pan. I formulated my binder in such a way that every pigment needs a kind of slightly different amount of binder, but I'm all using the same binder. So I'm not adding honey separately more with some pigments than others, nor do I with glycerin. And obviously I make my recipes and I try it out with each pigment if it works. Till now I haven't found a pigment that doesn't work with my binder by just tweaking the proportions. That has worked out for me. So Sergio, I don't know if you're still here. Do you make your own binder? Is Sergio still here? And Janina, do you make paint yourself? Do you work with pigments or do you work with paint, or are you just interested in the subject and don't do any of those? Everything is possible. Ah, look at that. And do you like to add honey, or are you avoiding honey? Do you have gossip for us, Sergio, or we're not gossiping? We're just talking about if you make your own paints and if you add honey to your binder, and if you make your own binder, you know. Sergio, tell us, do you make your own binder, and if so, do you add honey? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It is quite labor intensive, especially, you know, this isn't even a large batch, this is still a micro batch compared to other makers. But I had quite some burnt sienna left, I saw in my stock, so I wasn't in need for that many pans. And I can't go live for too long right now. I need to kind of clean up in about 10 minutes, I think. But what I might be able to do look at that. Are you going to make your own paints? Are you kind of did you see the videos of my classes? If so, that really means a lot to me. If not, fine as well. Well, I know someone who makes paint quite well. Just, you know, send me a DM. Sorry. Let's just do this. Why not do this? But I don't know if I can make it in time to show you. Yeah, actually, these live videos are stopping me from editing. It's kind of, you know, I'm making paint outside of these live videos, and I'm this is with binder, so it's not going to be a perfect slide at all. But Janina, I have to apologize for that. If there's any pre-orders from that, everything is like, my dryer is on 24/7 to make sure all the pre-orders are done in time. I didn't know you had an order open at me. I'm so sorry. I'm looking it up as I speak right now. We just ordered it. Let's have a look. Dirty blue. Well, I think you were there when I was making it, weren't you? Because those pens are dry, I think. So I can send you that. There's a burnt sienna. But this is not this. Like I said, I've tried to stuck with them. Ultramarine blue. Should be all in stock. Yeah. No, it's apart from the dirty blue, which is still drying, or is just dry. But I can't say for sure right now. I need to check that later. But my hands are sienna-ish, and I don't want sienna to be spilled on dirty blue, since that will make it a dirtier blue, and that's not how I intended it. Let's have a look. So I'm going to try something right now, and I'm not sure if it's going to work. So if it's not working, don't be mad at me. I'm still here, but I'm just setting up my microscope, and I'm focusing to actually see what burnt sienna gives us under the microscope, since this is a pigment I've not looked from up close before. That does look nice. Let me have a look. Let me just set it up. Okay, one moment, please. Oh yes, this is worth it. This is adding value to the stream, I think. Hopefully. I'm not sure if you agree with me, but let's just hope you do. Okay, so I need to take my mobile phone off the microphone. Could you help me with this? If I unplug it, could you let me know if you still hear me? Sorry for the noise. Right, do you still hear me? I need to put it down. If someone could help me with this. Because, okay, good. Okay, let's put it right over there. And I'm sorry, going to make a lot of noise. Okay, let's open it up for you guys. So I need to focus a bit. I see. So as you can see, I just swatched it. Oh, need to bring it in focus again. I just swatched it on the microscope slide. Oh, sorry for, I was quite close to my phone, so sorry if that hit sounded like yelling. Interesting thing is, this is polarized light, so there are polarizers between the light source if I would turn my polarizer, you can actually see different minerals. Why is it not turning black? Let's have a look. So I'm using a little bit too much light, I think. Or YouTube is compensating for the light that I'm taking away from it. Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame. So the YouTube Live is kind of compensating. There we go. That was the setting I needed. So you can see different minerals in the burnt sienna, and those the refraction of the light is shown by the crossed polarization, which I just made happen. Well, still it's not perfect. I can see the background when I'm using the camera app or a dedicated camera app for this. The background is completely black, but you can see how much different minerals are in a earth pigment. But you can see the reflection of all things that aren't that are different minerals, different maybe salts and stuff like that is in the pigment that gives us the color that we like. So let's try to turn this again. Yeah, that's not ideal on live stream. I need to have a look how I can do this in a proper way so you can actually see the black background. But it's, you know, it's visible, right? It's the idea is clear. This is burnt sienna under the microscope with cross polarization. Let's see if we can look for a more densely pigmented part of the plate. Almost look like opal, right? And it's probably not going to show you anything, is it? It's not enough light for it. Not too much of a magnification for something that is still wet. You can see the pigment particles like still floating around. So it's, and autofocus is on. So it's really hard to focus on things that are moving and things that are in the background. But this is, let me quickly make a calculation for you. Sorry, I need to do that since then I can tell you how much magnification we're on here. And times 40 times 6 is, we're at 1280 times magnification right now. So the depth of field is very small and it's still moving, so I have quite a hard time with the autofocus to actually get a proper sharp image. But you can see the different colors, right? But it's like opal, it's like turquoise, we have a bright orange with something that looks like it's reflecting starlight or something. Oh, and the different sizes obviously that are visible. What's that? Yeah, to be honest, I'm still learning. Right, so I'm just going to quickly. So I'm still learning about what you see under the microscope. I'm just connecting my microphone again, so hopefully you can still hear me. Please let me know if you hear me again. Okay, great. It's actually I actually don't know about the yellow, about particles in this pigment. I have a big book here that the Pigment Compendium, which is a great help identifying stuff at times. Let me just have a look if I can quickly find this. In the back of it, 906, 907, burnt sienna. So I'm just going to look it up for you. Yellow ochre, brown ochre, burnt sienna. That looks very similar to what we saw. It's containing goethite. That's not true. It's burnt sienna with fibrous colorless clay. We have red of brown ochre here containing goethite, gypsum and calcite. Brown gypsum containing goethite, opaque phases, feldspar, quartz and clays. So there's loads of things in the brown earth. But the blues, the reds and the yellows are visible here in the Pigment Compendium as well. I'm not going to lay it down on my paint, but it's a great resource. Right. I have worked with goethite, yeah. I don't have it in my shop, I don't have it in any pens, but I try to make a small batch of paint of every pigment that I get, just to get to know the pigment, get the feel of it, you know, maybe compare it with other pigments. Maybe they feel similar like a pigment that I've tried before. But yeah, that was burnt sienna under the microscope, so that was new for me as well. But it wasn't, like, just have to be clear in this, it was not a great example. Just to hit that quickly with a wet paint of my plate. There's binder in there, it was still wet. So what I need to do, I need to kind of mull a bit of pigment into pure alcohol. So put a drop of that under the on a slide, put a cover slide on it, let it dry, and then, you know, I can properly see and look at the pigment. This was just quickly to show you during the live. Have I ever had a defective pigment? I actually have. I had a very bad batch of malachite, which turned a very ugly yellowish green as soon as it came in contact with oxygen in its wet state on paper. So immediately when you swatched it. I also had a very, let me have a look if I can find it. No, I can't find it. I've had some greens which weren't that nice to me. But other than that, not really. Have you? Well, if you can share which one that was on a DM on Instagram, because I actually have to go, that would be great, since I have 2 or 3 versions of PO34, and I haven't had the time to try, of 36, I'm sorry, I haven't had the time to try all of them. So send me a DM, please. For those of you who are still with me here, it would mean a lot to me if you could like the video, put on notifications, just turn all my videos on a constant loop so I can get the watch hours, so I might be able to get the live stream from yesterday back if I can get support to help me. But I don't know which I have. I have 3 versions of it, and to be honest, I haven't tried 2 of them. So hopefully it's not the same batch, but you never know. Thank you, Sergio, Janina. Thank you for joining me, and see you next time. Actually, just to add this, I really appreciate everyone joining me and chatting and talking about it. It makes my job just a little bit more fun, even more than it already was. So, see you next time. Bye, guys.